Well, we were absolutely, positively, without a doubt, the best of friends. We went to the same church. We went to the same school. Oh, she was an older woman. I was in kindergarten. She was in second grade, but she still let me hang around with them. She always included me. We liked everything the same. Food. She loved coming to my house. Okay, so she was misguided there. She thought my older brothers were cute and funny. They were irritating and rude. But she loved being there. All of these kids in a house that was way too small for us, and a mother with nerves of steel. I liked going to her house because my brothers weren't there. There was no one to irritate me, no one to make fun of me, no one to say, I'm going to tell Mom. She was an only child. She said it was boring. I said, you don't know how lucky you have it. There was, however, one slight problem about being at her house. Her mother was afraid of everything. And I mean everything. We weren't allowed in the kitchen when she was cooking because the gas stove had an open flame. They had a 6-foot privacy fence around their backyard. We couldn't go back there at night because her mother was certain that some disaster was just lurking, like someone was going to come over that privacy fence and get us, or I was going to step in this hole that she always talked about that I never found. We had to stay inside when it got dark. Oh, and if the sky started to turn black, dark, and the wind started picking up, well, we had to stay in the living room on the divan so she knew where we were when the tornado came. She was always busy getting blankets and water and snacks and food and flashlights and extra batteries, and we sat on the divan. The tornado never came. But what was odd? I lived with a woman with nerves of steel. She lived with a mother who was afraid of everything, and guess who began to influence me? Her fear was so intense, and her description of what would happen to us if we didn't follow her every instruction was so graphic that it wasn't long before her fears became mine. I remember one afternoon I was home, and the sky began to get dark. There was no denying that a storm was coming. One of those awful summer Kansas storms. And so I was following Mom around like a little puppy, and I was saying, hurry up, Mom, you got to get the blankets, we got to get some food, we got to get some water. We need to go down it. We didn't have a basement, we had a crawl space. We need to get in the crawl space. The tornado is coming. Come on, Mom, hurry up. And my mom wasn't paying any attention at all. And finally, when she realized how upset I was becoming, she took me by the hand and she said, there's only one thing we need to do right now. And I said, what is it? We need to go get the clothes off the line before they blow into the next county. And so we went outside. And the sky was getting darker and the wind was getting stronger, and my mother was taking her time taking those clothes off the line. Not only that, in all that wind, she had to fold them just so and put them in the laundry basket. Then she started looking up. She said, wow, just look at that sky. I didn't want to look at the sky. Isn't it beautiful? How fast do you think those clouds are moving? Did you ever know that clouds could be so many different colors? You know, she was right. The sky really was beautiful. The clouds really were moving fast. And then as she continued to fold clothes, she turned around and she said, hey, look at your tree. It was the tree that we always climbed. And she said, can you believe it? That tree is strong enough to hold you and your two brothers all at one time. But look at it now. How do you think the tree knows when to bend and when to be strong? Suddenly that storm didn't seem quite so frightening anymore. She finally finished taking the clothes off the line, and she picked up the clothes basket and she said, come on, child. We need to go inside. I said, why? It's pretty out here. And she said, no, the thunder. The storm's getting closer, and pretty soon it will be lightning. And as we walked towards the door, she said, you need to remember two things. Always respect the force of nature, but don't ever be afraid of it. Because when we're most afraid of things, we don't think straight. That's when we get hurt. You know, I guess I thought my mom was about the smartest woman to ever live. I didn't know the advice she gave me was 2,000 years old. In today's reading from the book of Job, well, that's what Job is trying to tell the people of Israel. You see, the nation had gone through several years of a terrible, terrible plague. The locusts had devoured everything. And it was to the point where the people were almost becoming hysterical. They didn't know what they were going to eat. Their crops were totally destroyed again. They had run out of their supplies. But in their frantic attempts to take care of the problem, they forgot one thing. They had turned their backs on God. I mean, except for giving God an occasional nod of acquaintance, they weren't paying any attention. And so they were frantically trying to fix the problem, and God was watching, and nothing was happening. And so God told the prophet Joel, go. I'll tell you what to tell them. God said the day would come when the land would rejoice, when the locusts would go away. And in that moment, if they turned back to God, if they began to trust God again, they would have everything they wanted and more. But the people didn't listen, at least not at first. Their fear had turned into a form of faith. They had more faith in their fear than they had faith in God. But God never left them. God continued to be with them. Joel reassured them that when they let go of their fear and began to trust God, the world would right itself and they would know what to do. Now, Christians, like our ancient brothers and sisters, we are living in a society where fear, along with the worry and the anxiety that it creates, well, it's become our national pastime. And why not? There are so many things that are controlling our lives that are totally out of our control. Taxes, global warming, the increasing cost of health care, loss of job security, violence, the threat of terrorism. They're there. And there's not much we can do about any of it. The list could go on and on. But here's what we tend to forget. All of this fear, all of this worry, it is a symptom of a deep-seated spiritual problem. A failure to trust God's ability, God's willingness to provide, to guide, and to protect. But as Jesus reminds us in today's gospel, if only we would let go of our defenses, if only we could see beyond all that is blinding us, we would see God's presence in all around us, and we would understand God's willingness to protect us. The problem is that we get so caught up in our worries. We become so focused on our fears. All that we can see is those things that are wrong. And when that's all that we see, we become blinded to the possibilities, to the blessings, to all of the solutions that God is offering us. If only we would reclaim our faith. Even now, with all of the problems that surround us, we would see that God is at work in our lives. We would find so much for which to be thankful. When we learn to rely upon our faith rather than our fears, we will discover that even in the midst of the storms, God is there, offering us exactly what we need. In his devotional book, Bread for the Journey, Henry Nouwen wrote these words: "We don't have to go far to find the treasure that we are seeking. There is beauty and goodness right where we are. And only when we can see the beauty and the goodness that are close by can we recognize the beauty and the goodness that is all around us far and wide. There are trees and flowers to enjoy, paintings and sculptures to admire, and most of all, there are people. People who smile and play and show kindness and gentleness. They're all around us. They're there, waiting to be recognized as free gifts from God. All we have to do is receive them in gratitude. So why are we afraid? God is here. What more could we want? To God be the glory. And all God's people say,